Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Welcome to this workshop. I'm delighted to be here. And I would like to ask you to, while I'm talking at the very beginning, if you don't mind filling out the Google form that's in the chat. You just need to click on the form, click on the link, and then the form should come up, and hopefully it's a very straightforward form. So I'd appreciate if you would fill that out. Today's workshop is called Should Teachers Be Food Role Models? A Pandemic of Toxic Food-Related Deaths in the BIPOC Community. An alternate title that I thought of naming it is We Don't Curse in Front of Children, and We Shouldn't Eat Junk Food in Front of Children. So really, I'd like to warmly welcome all of you. I'm really excited about this workshop. My name is Elaine Perlman. I'm the director of the Peace Corps Fellows Program at Teachers College. And just a quick brief summary of what the Peace Corps Fellows Program does. It's a program that supports people who've completed Peace Corps service, so returned Peace Corps volunteers, as they work in high-need schools while getting their master's degree at Teachers College, Columbia University. And just a little plug for our program, we offer 12 full scholarships every year. So all of the fellows get full scholarships to Teachers College. So before we launch, I would like to take a moment of praise for those who came before us, our ancestors. I would like to thank them because we are all standing on their shoulders. I'd also like to acknowledge that New York City is a territory of land that was stolen from the Lenape people. They were Manhattan's original inhabitants who called the island Mannahatta, which means hilly island. So I'd just like to give a moment of thanks to all of those who came before us. I feel really excited about this workshop. I'm going to ask you for your feedback at the end, and I have a very thick skin, and I would like for your honest point of view, not only in the evaluation, but throughout this workshop. I would like to invite all of us to bring our full selves to our learning and our discussions. I'm highly interested in your thoughts and experiences, so please feel free to be activated as we contribute to our discussion. There's so many smart people at this conference, and I feel strongly that the smarter we get, the better we can serve our communities. So I'm delighted to be here. As I said before, this is my second time presenting at the Winter Roundtable. My first workshop was entitled Studying Feminism and the LGBTQIAP Movements in the Middle School Classroom. I would like to request that you put your email in the chat because I need to share a document with you that I will do in a little bit of time. Has everyone had a chance to click on, let me just check the Google form there, and give me 1 second here. I apologize for the delay. Hold on, I have a presentation for all of you. Oh, here it is, okay. So I would like for all of you, if possible, to log on to nearpod.com, and I'll put it in the chat. Hold on. And in the nearpod.com, I'm going to put the message in the chat. I mean, the code in the chat. This is our code. It's IY3NQ. So if you could put that into your Nearpod, hopefully my presentation will come up. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go to the second page. Hold on 1 second. I apologize. This is the wrong presentation. This is terrible. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I knew there would be some kind of thing here. I apologize. I had multiple iterations of this workshop and I just gave you the wrong one. Here it is. Okay, live participation. Here we go. Okay, is it the same code? I, Q3, and Q? Okay, it is indeed. Okay. Okay, so is everyone seeing the collaboration board? Can you see the collaboration board on Nearpod? Anybody give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Thank you. Okay, so if we could all fill out, what education have you received in school and during your life about nutrition?
Can you resend
so if you could
it?
add your thoughts to that. This is a collaboration board similar to a jam board that can hopefully help us share our ideas together.
Could you possibly resend that? I just joined.
Absolutely, yeah. So you write your thoughts at the bottom and then you can post them inside. So if you could go to nearpod.com and then type in the code IY3NQ, it's in the chat. So you write your thoughts at the very bottom and then you just click send. Okay, we have a few comments. If everyone could just type in when they received or if they received an education about nutrition in school or during in their lives, that would be great. Okay. So let's take a minute to read through them and then we're going to discuss what we found. Actually, it might be nice if we have a volunteer to read them. Do I have anyone who's in the mood for reading aloud this morning? Any volunteers? I can't see. Hold on one second. No one? No one's going to volunteer to read?
I can volunteer.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you want me to start?
Yeah, just anywhere. And just if you could read through them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So the first one here, from kindergarten to 5th grade, we learned about the 4 food groups: bread, cereals, meat, dairy, fruits each year. The food pyramid was important growing up. I'm a program member of the WIC program, so I work with nutritionists daily. I took a few nutrition classes in undergrad. Otherwise, I learned the basic food groups based on government standards in middle school. Okay, so very basic education about the food pyramid. We learned about the food pyramid in elementary and middle school. Most of what I know about nutrition is self-taught. I guess just the standard food pyramid, 4 food groups, etc. Basic nutrition, what are carbs, fats, and proteins. Middle and high school, my mom is a clinical dietitian, so I've learned more from her than in school. And yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Did anything in that listing surprise you? Is anyone surprised by anything they saw? Mary, you want to say something? I see you nodding.
Well, just that the government regulations and information is so outdated based on current nutritional information.
Yeah.
But people carry it with them throughout their lives, and it's hard to change it.
Yeah, we sort of get the information early. The information is not necessarily accurate, but because we receive it so young and it's not challenged by any other education, we sort of flow with it and think that's correct. Anybody have any idea about who sits on these nutrition boards, or sort of who makes up the rules, who evaluates? It's mostly people who work for industry, or people who are lobbyists, who have been lobbyists, or scientists who are heavily paid by industry, and
I'd
so
like to.
on.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
People who own massive parts of like livestock companies like Tyson and like other I guess, meat companies like that have lots of chemicals in their meats, like preservatives and stuff, that are actually on top of these boards because they have enough money to be so, because they kind of run as long as they run the nutrition boards and point, hey, this is nutritious and our product say fits in these nutrition boards, they keep on making money. So yeah.
Precisely. So we talk about big pharma. There's something called big food, right? Which is not so different in the way they conduct business. And for them, food is a gigantic business. So thank you so much for your comments. Any other thoughts?
Hi, my name is Kara.
Thank you, Kara.
My apologies that my video is not on. My bandwidth is not great right now, so I'm trying to keep my video off to preserve bandwidth. But so I'm in a course right now on poverty and inequity, and I learned that WIC benefits are based, I think the US Department of Agriculture decides like what people are going to get with their WIC packages, and that never made sense to me.
Yeah, and you can sort of see it in raw form in terms of what foods the government subsidizes, right? And what foods they do not. They primarily subsidize meat, dairy, and eggs, and they do not subsidize fruits and vegetables. So, they're sort of making it much cheaper to buy the foods that are the least healthy. And we have to ask ourselves why. One thing that is obvious is that without awareness, we can't make a free choice, right? If we're given certain amount of information, but not the full picture, it limits our ability to really understand, what's true and what's not true. Okay, so any other comments or thoughts about what we wrote in that section on the collaboration board? Thank you for the comments. I really appreciate it. And I encourage more people to also offer their comments throughout this workshop. Okay, we're going to move on to the next part of Nearpod, the next slide. So if everyone could go return to Nearpod. And wow, what do we see here? What is that? Now put your cursor on it, play around with it. You can move it. It's a 3D image. Tell me more. What is going on in this picture? What is that? Anyone?
Hi, I'm Kimon.
Hi, Kimon.
I'm just taking a guess. Is that the digestive system?
Absolutely. It's something, I think it's a really nice image because we can play with it. Not sure if you're aware of it. This is pretty new science, but the intestine, it looks suspiciously like the small intestine looks suspiciously like a brain, doesn't it? If sort of squished it up, it could be passed for a brain. And it turns out it is a brain. There are 100 million neurons in our small intestine. That's as many neurons that are in a dog's brain. And so people theorize that was our first brain, our survival brain. And this one developed down the line. So we have all these different interesting parts in our digestive system, but unfortunately we cannot see inside of ourselves. And if we could, I think we would be much healthier. Our tongues love the taste of foods that our body absolutely despises. And because we're not able to see the impact on our organs, bones, and blood of the foods that we eat, we miss when diseases are developing and we cannot prevent them. We cannot take action because we don't see them developing. And what we see on the outside can be very deceiving. We can look really good and have a disease within. For example, my sister, who's 2 years younger than me and thinner than me, has type 2 diabetes, and that's caused by eating too much sugar, fat, and salt. I'm 52, and many diseases are caused by eating unhealthy foods. The diseases that are caused by eating unhealthy foods often begin to show up in our 40s and 50s because they've been slowly growing in our bodies for decades. So when I first spoke to my sister about her diabetes, she said, well, it's just genetic. Dad had diabetes too, and now I do. My other sister, who's a doctor, also said that diabetes is genetic. But it turns out diabetes is not at all genetic, But it may seem genetic because many people in the same family may have it because everyone is eating in that family the same or similar foods. And so it's important to remember that diabetes stems from our diet and not from our DNA. I'd like to take a few minutes to share my story about food justice and how food justice and young children, food justice for young people became my biggest interest. When I was growing up, I started cooking full meals for my family when I was age 7. I was totally obsessed with food. I read cookbooks and I dreamt of one day becoming a food writer. I was a vegetarian when I was in college, but unfortunately I became very anemic. And so within 3 years, I was diagnosed as anemic. I was mostly eating muffins. I was not a healthy vegetarian. And after I saw the low level of iron in my blood, I returned to eating an omnivorous diet, a diet of eating everything. I went on to become a teacher. I've been a teacher for 30 years. I've taught every grade but 1st and 12th, and I spent 8 years teaching kids under the age of 5. I was also a school administrator. And then in 2015, I got a job that totally changed my life. I began teaching nutrition to 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders in the South Bronx, Crown Heights, and in Harlem. I took a Cornell University class called a certificate class called Plant-Based Nutrition. And I love teaching nutrition. Every class, we made a healthy snack and we talked about healthy food choices. And the experience totally changed me. I will never forget the faces of my students who described older siblings, parents, and grandparents who were suffering from strokes and type 2 diabetes and other health catastrophes that are connected with the foods they were eating. And the way the students talked about their parents and grandparents and siblings who were suffering is something I will never, ever forget. Our health problems, it really sparked my passion to try to change the food system and provide a better life for my students. Our health problems only manifest after years of development. And in fact, half of my students and half of all children between the ages of 2 and 15 have fatty streaks in their arteries, half of them. Now, what do fatty streaks indicate? They indicate that trouble's on its way. Heart disease is on its way. Is heart disease a serious illness? Well, 1 in 4 American deaths are caused by heart disease, and 660,000 of our brothers and sisters die of heart disease every single year in the United States, 660,000. Children don't come into this world asking to have heart disease imposed upon them because of the food choices of the adults who are serving them unhealthy foods. Because our government is the one serving these unhealthy meals in schools, a place where many students are eating 2 out of every 3 meals, we have a systematic problem that prioritizes profits over people. Since meeting my beautiful students, I've been trying to cook up ways for our food system to change. And that's how the idea was born to provide a required nutrition workshop for all teachers. When we certify teachers, several workshops are already required. I would like a nutrition workshop or a nutrition class to be mandatory for all new teachers and a requirement that current teachers should also take. So just for those of you who don't know, the current teacher workshops that are required in New York State are child abuse and identification and reporting training, school violence intervention and prevention training, and Dignity for All Students, the Dignity for All Students Act training. A 4th workshop could be entitled something like Food and Nutrition Inside and Outside the Classroom. This idea is motivated by the poet Maya Angelou's great quote, "When we know better, we do better." Teachers need the education in order to be resources for our students because doctors do not learn about education in medical schools. And this makes the need for teachers to gain more nutrition expertise. At the very least, teachers should know what foods provide the nutrients needed by the body and which ones cause harm and spark chronic deadly diseases, at the very least. So I'd like to share the plan for our workshop for today. First, we will explore ideas through a visualization. I taught pre-K for 6 years, and I strongly believe that engaging the imagination is a key to learning. I tell the teachers I work with, the Jaffe Peace Corps Fellows, that tapping into students' imaginations is a key to learning. From my point of view, if any teacher can teach pre-K well, then they can also teach 12th grade well, because the same key components of engaging all students through encouragement, imagination, and creativity is true for all learners. So I'd like to engage our imaginations through a visualization. After the visualization, we'll have a discussion, and this will be followed by watching a video, and we'll be stopping it frequently for discussions. And then we'll explore what a workshop for teachers might look like. What are your ideas about what this workshop should be like? So I view life like we've all been invited to a gigantic party against all odds, and we are guests at this party. None of us know when the party will end, but we should do our best to be in optimum condition so that we don't spend the party suffering from diseases caused by eating unhealthy foods, diseases like diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, because food is a life and death issue. My aim today is to talk about food in young people in a way that may persuade you that teachers should not only be role models for how to become scholars, helping students progress with their skill development, such as speaking, writing, and problem solving. I strongly believe that teachers should be food role models. Why? Because eating healthy foods leads to feeling better in our bodies throughout our lives. Some say, and I agree with them, that teaching young people to eat well, even cook and grow foods as well, is just as important as learning to read and write. So I'd like to take a pause now and open up the floor to find out, what do you think of the ideas presented so far? Just sort of hearing from you, because I've spoken a lot. So ideas, thoughts that have come up so far. Agree, disagree, think it's totally off. I'm open to any discussion.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So
A workshop about education about food would be fantastic. And here's the thing. I think humanity has been led to eat very bad food because of Europeans. And this is good. This goes way back when. So Europeans invaded a bunch of countries to, I guess, colonize everything. And in short, they took away and labeled a lot of, say, indigenous people's diets as animalistic. And this is like a lot of people used to eat bugs, actually. And bugs are way more nutritious and have way more protein than any, animal. And, they also have way more vitamins as well, and they're more healthy, low fats as well. But why do I say bugs? Well, I don't know why. What I'm explaining is a workshop would be great, but what really needs to be changed is our view on food, like as a whole, because the world was colonized by Europe a lot. We basically have all the information, and we are kind of very deep rooted in this issue. And to really take on this issue, we need to rethink it completely. Now, how do we rethink this? I think we should look at, say, species that are close to us in, I guess, evolution wise. So we, as people today, we eat a lot of meat. And there was this picture out of a tiger at school. I just remembered. We eat a lot of meat, like a, say, apex predator, like a tiger. And do our teeth look sharp, and do we have claws and fangs? No, we don't. We have molars, and those are made to crush, say, nuts and plants and, things like that, much very closely like a monkey's teeth. So this should be evident enough that we should not be eating as much meat as we do. And because we don't have super sharp canines meant for cutting and shearing meat off of, say, animals. So that's, I guess, my pitch about how we should completely reimagine food as well. And the thing is about food is, I guess the major issue about food, I'll finish this up really quick, is a lot of it is deep rooted in our culture. And to completely rethink food, we might have to rethink culture as well. And that's extremely hard. That's all I got to say. But that was my, I guess, thought about this whole subject.
Thank you. And I'd like to recommend, thank you for that. Dr. Milton Mills, M-I-L-L-S. He has a terrific talk on YouTube about exactly what you're talking about. If you look at the teeth and the bone structure and on so many different elements, human beings resemble herbivores, not carnivores in so many ways. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts? Are you not talking because you're so excited about the visualization? You can't wait for it to start and you just don't want anything to get in its way? Okay. Yes,
Sorry.
please.
Okay. So I came from a Waldorf school. So I learned there a lot. About how food can affect not only our bodies but our environment. Like the food we eat can like greatly affect not only our digestive system but like kind of the impact that what the amount of food and what we eat would have on just the general planet and animals and plants that we have consumed. And yeah, so I do agree that we should really focus on our nutrition and really what is important for and what really we should be eating. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Joanna.
Hi, I was just going to share how struck I am by the fact that the medical school doesn't teach about nutrition. One of my best friends also went to medical school at Mount Sinai, and I remember asking her about that, and she said we had one course, and I thought that was so striking and just reflective of culture, like in medical school and big pharma, and how much that dictates what we think is normal or healthy, when in fact it's really just political and motivated by money.
Thank you, Joanna. And I actually talked to different people about what medical schools actually teach in those courses, and they'll teach like how much sodium and magnesium need to be in an infusion. So they'll talk about the mineral contents of the infusions. There's not a lot of talk about actual cooking. Now, it's also true that doctors in their professional development during their careers don't study nutrition. And none of my doctors in New York City know about nutrition. They know about prescriptions. That's pretty much what they can offer.
Absolutely.
So thank you all for those great comments. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Both of my parents died from diseases sparked by eating unhealthy foods. I witnessed their pain and suffering that lasted for years. And you all know that Shakespearean phrase, all's well that ends well, right? Well, for my parents, life did not end well. For both of them, it ended with multiple surgeries, panics that led to visits to the emergency room, awful drug side effects, long hospital stays, and for me, the worst of it all was the intense pain that only worsened over time for both of them. So that explains a bit about my personal interest in eating healthy food. But I do have an even greater interest on how we should teach young people about nutrition, and teachers should have the knowledge in order to do that. In countries where people eat heart-healthy foods, like in Bolivia, their heart disease rate is nearly non-existent. Yet here, 1 in 4 deaths, like I said before, are caused by heart disease alone. Also, other diseases are caused by eating unhealthy foods. So our food system causes human injustice. For example, African Americans and Latino people in the United States have double the rate of heart disease and diabetes as white people. So I'm devoted to doing what I can to fix what is broken. We're serving unhealthy foods in our school cafeterias and creating addictions among our youngest and most vulnerable. Once an addiction is established, reversing that addiction is a nearly impossible and very real struggle. So before the visualization begins, I'd like to introduce you to a new word that I learned in the food and nutrition certification class I took recently at Teachers College. The word is FUD, F-U-D. The word FUD is a made-up word for edible non-foods that lack nutrition. It's sort of like dud or phony, a FUD. Interestingly, when I looked up FUD on the internet to see if it was a real word, it's not, but FUD is an acronym for fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is exactly how I feel when I look at the ingredients in the popular FUD Takis or Cheetos. By the way, when the government chooses to create addictions to and provide big money subsidies for unhealthy FUDs, these edible non-foods that lack nutrition, they're also creating markets for both these terrible foods, adding to profits for the richest in this country while decimating our health. The epidemic of these diseases is very profitable for the healthcare industry. And the profit piece is the answer when we question why children in New York City cafeterias are fed Fritos and not fruits by the DOE. So we're just about ready for the visualization. I would like to ask all of us to set an intention about how we are approaching our learning, hopefully one that is open to changing our minds. In the words of Eric Adams, we have to unlearn what we've learned so we can learn. With this visualization activity, I'm requesting that we all put our emotional selves at the forefront, and later on in the workshop, we will call on our analytical selves to be activated. Visualizations ignite our imaginations and lead us to have highly stimulating thoughts that can work wonders. I have experienced its potential to create positive emotional change, and it's also been great for my immune system. I don't know if any of you do this, but years ago I heard that when we get sick, this is kind of like the placebo effect, right? If we visualize our white cells fighting and winning against germ cells, it helps us to heal faster. I do exactly that. I imagine a cartoon meanie germ being crushed by a heroic white blood cell. And in the same spirit, I would like all of us to experiment with visualizations in a way to explore new ideas and possibly promote some positive change. So, since we do not need to see each other during this, I would like all of us to turn off our cameras and join me in this short visualization. And for the students, you can keep the camera on. Oh, you did. I'll turn it on. Okay. It's up to you. To relax ourselves a bit more, I would like all of us to do some breathing. So please, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes, rest your palms face up on your lap. Imagine the sun is beaming onto your palms, warming them up and relaxing all of you. To relax ourselves a bit more, I'd like to do some breathing. So please feel free to breathe in through our noses and breathe out through our nose or mouth. Breathe in, I am alive. Breathe out, I am here. Breathe in, I am alive. Breathe out, I am here. Now I'd like for us all to picture that the air that we're breathing has colors. Breathe in, orange. Breathe out, purple. Breathe in, pink. Breathe out, gray. Breathe in, green. Breathe out, yellow. Now I will speak a little bit about our bodies. We are all made of cells. 30 trillion individual cells are working diligently and lovingly in our bodies right now. We are our cells. I would like us to feel an emotional and even maybe a grateful connection to our cells. Quietly survey and consider all of the exhausting processes your cells are going through right now. Emotionally connect to those group of cells in our organs and our blood and our bones. Now imagine we are a single blood cell traveling through one of our 100,000 miles of blood cells that run throughout our body. Check out the walls of our arteries and veins. They are clean and free of the thick, white, sticky, blobby plaque that coats some arteries and veins, blocking the smooth flow of blood through all of our organs and extremities. Of those 30 trillion cells that comprise our whole body, I would like all of us to imagine that we have become just one cell that we will embody. Imagine that we are a single kidney cell. Kidneys are little quarter pounders of love. I've learned a lot about kidneys in the past few years. A year ago at the end of January, I donated my right kidney to a stranger. My son had done the same thing for a stranger 6 months before I did. I was proudly following in his footsteps. So here we are, a little but mighty kidney cell. As a kidney cell, we are on this essential team that cleans our blood, regulates our blood pressure, and works many other wonders for us. Now, as a kidney cell, we rely on nutrients to keep us alive and working well, sort of how a good quality car relies on gas to run efficiently. We rely on nutrients. So we are a little kidney cell awaiting our meal so we can have nutrients as fuel to power up for the day. On the outside of our cell is a membrane that we will pretend is a very sensitive skin. So we are waiting for nourishment. We are feeling optimistic and hopeful that the nutrients we will need will be in the food we will be served. Coming in at last, the food has been selected and eaten. The food is a cucumber. Soft, watery, tasty, full of potassium, fiber, vitamin C and K, magnesium. How do we receive this food? How does it feel on our cell walls? Cucumbers are digested in only 30 minutes, so we, the kidney cells, will have access to the cucumber's great nutrients very quickly. Next comes in my students' favorite, Takis. Full of saturated fat and sodium, Takis are a non-food FUD that has ingredients that can be described as disease sparkers. When I see them in the store, I think, you're trying to kill me. Takis are devoid of all healthy nutrients, but they do contain the dangerous 5, BHA, BHT, TBHQ, sodium nitrate, and sodium nitrite. These are all known carcinogens. Next in comes a piece of animal meat. Our cucumber digested in a half hour. The meat will take 2 days to digest. As you can imagine as a cell, the tough and greasy foods are a time-consuming challenge to break down and extract the nutrients from. So we've so far eaten cucumber, Takis, and meat, and now in comes more food, a donut. I know donuts really well because I used to work at Dunkin' Donuts. Donuts are full of cholesterol. The thick, white, sticky fat that sticks to the walls of our arteries accumulates and hardens to a thickness that creates a shell that blocks our blood from smoothly flowing. Dairy, meat, sugar, oil, and eggs all cause these cholesterol blockages. Now, donuts are drenched in over 3 spoonfuls of sugar. That's over half of our daily allowance. And when we eat that sugar, it gets mixed with the water in our bodies. So visualize the water mixing with the sugar to create a sticky, sugary, thick syrup. And imagine how the sugary mess would appear if it spilled and dried on our kitchen counter. Now imagine it sticking to the walls of our arteries, blocking that life-giving blood flow. When diabetes develops, the blood is overwhelmed and becomes a kind of thickened, sugary syrup that cannot travel through our thinnest vessels, making it a challenge to reach our extremities, creating blindness and the need for amputations. The clogging of our 100,000 miles of vessels makes it harder for our blood to glide smoothly through. Our heart needs to work harder to pump the blood throughout our bodies. Our blood vessels start out wide and then become very, very narrow, just like a tree's branches go from wide to narrow to the narrowest at the tips of the branches. When the narrowest blood vessels, blood-carrying pipes become coated in cholesterol, the blockages happen. This is one factor behind the development of Alzheimer's and the blockage of the super thin brain vessels. But we are still a kidney cell, and we favor the plant foods because their nutrients are easier to access. When we eat greasy and hard to digest foods, our bodies are challenged throughout the digestive process. Now imagine trying to extract nutrients while getting exposed to the harms from the sugar, meat, dairy, and Takis. We might become a bit angry as a kidney cell. We might protest, why so many FUDs and not enough foods? With the anger comes redness and puffiness, known as inflammation. Processed, oily, nutrient-free, chemical-filled, saturated fat-laden FUDs spark that inflammation. I have seen photos of inflamed organs. When cells become red and puffed up and inflamed from mistreatment due to the ingestion of FUDs, our bodies more likely to contract chronic diseases. But because I like stories to end happily, our last incoming food will be our daily handful of nuts and seeds. We have nutrient-rich almonds, sunflower seeds, cashews, and pumpkin seeds, filling us up with a rich supply of vitamins and minerals. Now that we are well-nourished, we, the kidney cells, can excel in our work as we remove waste products from the body, balance the body's fluids, release hormones that regulate blood pressure, and control the production of red blood cells. All very hard to do, and we want our kidneys to be in optimal conditions to do that. Our bodies have so many responsibilities to keep our amazing body alive. Now, with our eyes continuing to be closed, take a moment to reflect on what we just experienced, how it made you feel, and any thoughts we may have. Now, I would like for you to open your eyes, and if you feel like it, turn on your cameras. And Thank you for participating in that. I would like for you to go to Nearpod, the next slide, and just quickly note down what are your thoughts about the that visualization. Thank you.
Is there a link to the Neopod?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Here's,
Sure.
go on to nearpod.com, and then it's IY3NQ. And if you could everybody put their emails in the chat, you can send it to me privately, or you can put it any way you like, but I want to share a document with everyone. So that's why I'm asking you to do that. And so we are, yeah, hopefully everybody is able to input their thoughts into the Nearpod about what they felt about the visualization. And while you're doing that, I'm sharing the document I want to share. Okay. So I'm slowly inputting your emails to share a document with you. Yeah, I would just like to have an open discussion a bit about the visualization. Anything you learned that you'd like to share with us? I appreciate you putting the comments in. Kimone. Did I say it right? I tried to.
Kimon, hi.
Okay, sorry.
I really liked that visualization. I feel like it was very helpful and it was realistic without being scary. Like it wasn't exactly a scare tactic like most nutritious groups try to do. And it it really made me think about what I've been eating, because there's points where I may eat healthy and then, some days aren't as good as the healthiest days. And when you described the kidney and the cucumber, I got kind of sad because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's relying on me for nutrients and like what it needs. And it's so optimistic that I'm going to give it exactly what it needs to function. But some days just aren't like that. And I feel like it made me think, oh my gosh, there's some days that I'm letting my body down, and it's literally the only thing we have and that we can fully control. So it really made me rethink it. And I liked the water and the sugar and spilling it on the table, because, you see what it does to the surface, but imagine it in your body. It's the same thing with like drinking high C and juices. When it spills on a surface, if it's dyeing the table, like why would you drink that for yourself? So it was really enjoyable and also pretty educational as well.
I'm delighted. Thank you so much. You don't have to give me only good feedback about Kimon. I loved it. And thank you. It's exactly what I wanted to achieve, because I feel like we are sometimes, just unaware. We're blind to what's inside of us. And, my son a year and a half ago said, I want to donate my kidney to a stranger. I was like, kidneys, don't we need our kidneys? I actually didn't even know what a kidney did. I just knew we needed them, right? So there's also that lack of education and therefore lack of gratitude. So I just feel like the more we know, the better, not only we can serve our students, the better we can be on this earth, right? So thank you so much for that. Any other thoughts? Well, thank you for sharing. The next thing I'd like to do is I would like to share with you a video by Eric Adams. Is anyone familiar with Eric Adams? So he's the current Brooklyn Borough president, and he's a really interesting person who had a fascinating food journey. and he is very determined to bring better nutrition education to students. So there are actually several clips I want to show you in this video. So we're going to start out with one. After that clip, we'll pause and chat and then continue. So I think that this video is highly informative and also super interesting. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, let me share my screen.
I want to go back to a point that I thought was very powerful in the beginning of your book, where you talked about the moment where you actually woke up blind. And I think for a lot of people, you know, there are these watershed moments, diagnosis, extreme pain, kind of like medical crisis as you experience that really wakes them up. I like to think about those moments as messages from our bodies, from the universe to kind of course correct. And so I don't necessarily think that they're bad, but they can be very scary. And so I'm wondering if it's not too traumatic for you. If you, I don't want to like trigger anything. You want to skip this, we can go. But I'm wondering if you could just talk about that moment, because I think it's this thing where, you know, we can do our best, and obviously there's certain things we can avoid, but there's a lot of agency that we have to actually work towards preventing these kind of health crises like this. Can you talk about that moment where you woke up and you couldn't see anything?
Right. No, it was intense because I was already feeling the discomfort in my stomach that was an ulcer, and I didn't know about it. I thought it was colon cancer. I just lost a good friend to colon cancer, and the symptoms were the same. It wasn't gas, it wasn't moving, it was just standing there like just a knotted feeling. And I thought it was colon cancer. And I woke up that day to go to the doctor. I looked up at the alarm clock, and I couldn't see the numbers at all. I could just barely make out the clock. And at that time, I thought sleep was in my eyes, and I just kept blinking my eyes. And I realized, I said, wait a minute, you know, something is wrong here. So, and as I walked out the door, you know, everything was just so blurry. And it's amazing how diabetes is just such a secret killer, how it just lurks in your body until it starts to expose itself. And all those symptoms came at once. You know, many of them I was ignoring for a long period of time. And, you know, so when my vision was lost, men traditionally, you have to drag us to the doctor for the most part, you know. So the tingling in my hands and feet, that was the nerve damage, the ulcer feeling or the pain in my stomach, you sort of shake that off a little. But when you can't see, brother, you know, that's another game. Yeah. And I knew I had to do something immediately to address the problem, but it was extremely frightening. And as you stated, many of us get the alarm clock, but we continue to hit the snooze button. I decided, no, I'm gonna get my butt up, and I'm going to find out how do I get engaged with the health that I was dealing with, the crisis I was dealing with.
Okay, so that's the first clip. So that's just to give you a sense of how everything started for Brooklyn Borough President. He's the Brooklyn Borough President Adams. So let me forward just a little bit to here, 2557. Okay.
Allopathic physicians tell us. And I know that you didn't want to do that, and you decided to kind of venture off and do a lot of research on your own. So can you tell us about what did you discover when you started researching alternative ways to think about kind of recalibrating, you know, bringing you back into homeostasis, dealing with this chronic illness through what you were eating and just other lifestyle changes?
It was just an amazing, again, wake-up call. And probably the most thrilling part of this journey was Mom, you know, watching her injecting herself with insulin day after day, looking at that grimace on her face. After 7 years, she never got used to it. And then for her baby, you know, her son also, to now be inflicted with the same chronic disease. And so mom was over 80 when she decided to go a plant-based journey. Mom was on 9 medications. She was on insulin for 7 years and diabetic for 9. And after 2 months going plant-based, mom was able to cycle off the insulin. You know, prior to going plant-based, mom was taking medicine to bring down her sugar, medicine to bring it up when she became hypoglycemic. She was taking medicine to deal with the kidney failure that was being caused because of the over medication that she was using. And so one of the big misnomers is that people actually believe all of this medicine we're taking is curing their diseases. It's not. It's covering the symptoms. And there are side effects to every piece of medicine you take. And when you look at those side effects and how it impacts. And so as I started the journey and was able to influence my mother and my other siblings, who also, all of them, my sister was going through breast cancer. My other sister lost her kidney due to diabetes. My other brother was going through chemo. We should not have to benchmark our lives by the chronic conditions that our loved ones are going through. And that is what this journey is about, to state that we could be healthy. And that is why we're so committed to what we're doing in a real way.
I'm wondering.
Okay, any thoughts so far in what you've heard from Eric Adams? Anything surprise you? Anything stick out that you'd like to discuss?
Go ahead. I'll raise my hand. Okay. Yeah, this kind of struck a little like it did remind me of a lot of my family, because there's a lot of diseases and like health issues that is in my family. And so like when he was talking about this, it really just like reminded me of that, and was very just it was nice to hear that there's like a lot of like people who are really recognizing this and are really just trying to change it.
Thank you for bringing that up. And it's interesting because when Eric Adams first went to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed him with a pile of medicines, and he may talk about this, we may hear this later, but no, he doesn't bring it up here. I've heard him talk several times. He said that the doctors told him, he said, can I change my diet? Is there anything I can do on that front? And the doctor said, yeah, you can try changing your diet, but you're still going to need to be on medicine. So discouraging him from changing his diet. And it could be just a lack of awareness among doctors that changing the diet can actually cure the disease. I think a lot of people think that these diseases are incurable. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, we're going to keep watching then.
How did your physician react when you told them that you wanted to pursue this alternative route to healing yourself rather than popping the pills? And did you stick with them? Did you have to make a pivot to another person who got what you were going for? How was that whole thing?
That's a great question. I recall returning to my internist, who's a good friend. I love him. He's a very conscientious, thoughtful doctor. And returning, he checked my blood sugar the first day I came back after the 3 months. And he looked at it, he was like, wow, because my blood sugar was so high, I was in advanced stages of diabetes. And he saw it, how low it was. He says, wow, the medication is working. And I told him, I put the full bottle on his desk and said, no, doctor, I'm not taking the medication. He said, what are you doing? And I said, I went to a plant-based, whole food, plant-based life. And it's important that I don't encourage people to do this journey without being in connection with their physician. You know, it's so important, because when you stop eating the foods that raises your blood sugar, you are going to stop needing medication, but you need to cycle off the of medication with a healthcare professional. So when you go to your doctors, you should ask them, do you believe in a whole food, plant-based disease reversal? If they say no, you should find another physician. You should find one that believes in it. And so I was able to have doctors, two of my doctors, my endocrinologist and my internist, stated that, listen, we don't know much about this, but we want to be supportive of you and your journey. And when I gave my endocrinologist one of the books that I was reading, she says, I have to change my whole practice because I never knew this. And I think, Brian, the biggest Shakespearean tragedy in this country is what we do to doctors in medical school.
Yeah.
Only 25% of medical schools teach one course on nutrition. We teach prescription to cover symptoms and to continue sick care instead of teaching health care.
Yeah, I totally agree. My sister's a medical doctor, and she said they took a 8-hour nutrition course of the whole time that she was in medical school.
Think about that.
And and I think, we need to really reconsider how do we restructure our medical system to be one that's more about prevention and, just life and not just responding to illness and crisis. And I think, I'm excited that there have been a lot of strides made. You have Tulane Medical School, which has been one of the leaders in kind of helping their students think about, learning how to the fundamentals of cooking so that they can be apprised to plant-based cooking and help their patients think about this differently. You have Kaiser Hospital out here who has a really robust food program where they have classes for the public, where they have workshops that are all based around plant-based eating as a way to address these things.
Love it. That's amazing, and that's important. Because we do a disservice to our doctors. And as I indicate, let's be clear, our healthcare system, which I call sick care, is not sustainable. 30 million Americans are diabetic, 84 million are pre-diabetic. We're spending 80 cents on a healthcare dollar on chronic diseases. We can't continue. Diabetes is a leading cause of blindness, leading cause of non-trauma limb amputation, one of the leading causes of kidney failure, heart disease. We can't continue down this road any longer, and we have to do something differently. And what you just mentioned about Tulane and other schools, it's a real breath of fresh air that we're being honest about how we are feeding our healthcare crises by what's on our plate every day.
Okay, any thoughts? Anything you'd like to share? Anything sparked from what we just heard?
I found it, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I found it really interesting that when he was talking about the medical school, and we talked about this earlier, in how they just lack of nutrition in medical school, and and how his endocrinologist didn't know about this book before he brought it to his doctor. And it made me think of, my mom's actually a clinical dietitian who actually works closely with people, young children with diabetes. And at the hospital she works at, it's a very interdisciplinary approach. So they have the endocrinologists, but they have nutritionists and they have psychologists, and they have a lot of different people working on with the families to help them through the diabetic world and how to navigate it especially when they're newly diagnosed. And she was telling me for a while ago that once they get into adult care, they don't have access to these resources. So even though they might be followed by endocrinologists, they still don't have, they might not go to see a dietitian, or they might not see anything else that is they might need even after they've left the pediatric world. So it makes me really sad that they don't have those opportunities as readily available as they do at where my mom works. So it's just unfortunate.
So just to clarify, where your mom works, those services are only available to children or to?
Yeah, it's a pediatric hospital. So it's, they go up until like early adulthood, but once they reach like 25 plus, they're over to an adult.
facility.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I would imagine working in with pediatric diabetes patients, she would be working with type 1 diabetes patients more often than type 2, right?
Yes, she does get a little bit of both, but it is, I think, I don't remember, I can't remember what the divide is.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. But this neglect and ignorance is inexcusable among doctors. Like I said, my cholesterol is Olympic level great because I eat only plants. And sorry about the bragging. And my doctors have asked me, like, what's up? How can you're 52? And I'll say, oh, plant-based. And they'll be like, I didn't know that would, cause such a person to have such great cholesterol numbers. So there is a lack of awareness. And just a simple Googling of it would, make it obvious, but they're just not trained that way. And also, I think that once in the field, they're not learning it through professional development. So they would have to learn on their own. Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, well, there's more I'd like to share of the video. So I'm going to continue with that.
Yeah, and what's powerful is this part of it really resonated with me, DNA or dinner, because my mom was diabetic for 15 years and 7 years on insulin. And all the doctors were telling me that it was due to my DNA. And little did I know it was not my DNA, it was my dinner. And that's what this is all about. Okay, and you want me to read up to what point of it? Want me to read the whole?
I mean, maybe you don't have to read the whole thing, but It's so juicy. I'd love for you to do it, but I feel like the Q&A is vitally important. So maybe you could just read up until wow, yeah.
I'll flow until we get to a natural end. How's that?
Okay, that's cool.
All of a sudden, I had diabetes. It would define the rest of my life. Everywhere I went, everything I did, I will have to keep in mind, is this safe with my condition? You know what, as I'm reading this, I'm getting chills. Because I remember that moment, and I know so many other people can remember the day. You benchmark your life by diagnosis. At first I obeyed my doctor's orders. What else could I do? After all, he went through 4 years of medical school, a residency, a fellowship, and many years of practice to arrive at his conclusion. If he said I need meds for the rest of my life, surely he was right. And so I went about my normal business. I learned to live with my impaired vision, but then came the side effects from the medication, the upset stomach and general fatigue. Moreover, the pills didn't help the general aches and pains I started having after 40. Whenever I saw a clock, I thought of my life slowly winding down. Like many people, diabetes runs in my family. We even have our own word for it, sugar. When I was growing up, it seemed that everyone in the family eventually came down with it. After my Aunt Mary was diagnosed with sugar, she brought a colorful pill organizer wherever she went. I thought that was normal. After my mother was diagnosed with sugar, she had to go get regular insulin injections. That was normal. When my Aunt Betty died of sugar at age 57, that too was normal. I remember attending a family reunion with my mother not long after Betty's death. When we arrived, I realized Mom had forgotten her diabetes and medication. We have to go back for them, I told her. But my mom rolled her eyes and yelled out to the family, anyone have any diabetes medicine I can take? Nearly everyone in the room pulled out a plastic case and shook their pill boxes in unison. My family had pills that were every color of the rainbow: metformin, statins, blood pressure medications, and many others. As a kid, I watched my family rely on these drugs, and now at age 56, it was my turn. When I left the pharmacy after my diagnosis, I thought, is this really my future? I had put myself through college, worked my way up from a B cop to a captain in the New York State Senate, and then to Brooklyn Borough Hall. I had planned to become mayor of New York one day. I stared at those sad little pills in that sad little box and thought, I've come too far to live out of a pill box. There must be a better way, a healthy way. When I asked my doctor about other options, he held up his hands. Sorry, Eric, there aren't any. If you lose some weight and stay on your meds, you might be able to keep your diabetes from getting worse. That's the best you can hope for. That's the best I can hope for? I wasn't going to accept that. I wasn't going to accept a bad situation and just live with it. I certainly didn't do that after I was arrested for trespassing at age 15. It was a dumb thing to do, but the white cops thought it was appropriate to take me to the basement of the 103rd precinct, beat me up, and toss me into juvenile detention center. Instead of accepting that this was how police officers would always treat young people of color, I vowed to join that same force and change it from within. As a police captain, I co-founded 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, an advocacy group focused on improving relations between police officers and African Americans. When I was elected to the New York State Senate, I fought vehemently against the NYPD's stop and frisk policy and other forms of racial profiling. There are some things you just don't accept, and bad health is one of them. My family and my doctor believe that sugar was genetic. It's just something that happens when you get older, they said, especially for Black folks. As a former police officer, though, I knew better than to take anything for granted. I was going to evaluate the situation based on the evidence and come to an informed conclusion, just like I would be at a crime scene. Was chronic disease and pain encoded into my DNA, or was there something else going on?
Yeah.
Okay, any thoughts on what we just watched? Okay, I'm going to just show the last clip on that one. Well, there are actually more clips that I wanted to show you. I'm going to show you the last one. Let me just adjust it there. Uh-oh, where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Give me 1 second.
I first want to start with, I had put a message up on Instagram.
Oh no, hold on.
And
If the marshals threw us out and we would have a change of clothing. You know what's interesting, Brian? When you come from the heart, it reaches a person's heart. And people can or care when people know when you authentically care about them. And, people have been there for me. When I was a little boy growing up in South Jamaica, Queens, mommy was raising 6 of us, Brian. We used to go to school every day carrying a glad bag full of clothing because mommy didn't want us to be embarrassed if the marshals threw us out and we would have a change of clothing. Ooh. Christmas time, we had toys wrapped on the back porch. Easter times, our neighbors used to leave pairs of shoes. Thanksgiving times, they would leave turkeys. We had things called a susu, where they used to collect money so they could pay mom's mortgage for us. People have been there for me. And I need to start depositing in the social bank of life to let them know I have not forgotten. I am who I am because people were there to make me who I am.
Ashe, ashe. All right, so Manuel Almonte asks, as the next mayor of New York City, what's your plan to make Whole Foods more accessible to low-income families?
I like that, and that's a great question. I really believe that we can move our city to an agrarian economy that not only can we eat healthy, but we can also see the profitability attached to it to learn about this thing called urban farming. Every NYCHA development could have a rooftop garden on the top to grow their food using hydroponic greenhouses and serve it and have it readily available. We are going to have a real push towards urban farming. Our young people are going to learn a nutritional based education. We're going to really ensure that in every area that we're feeding people, we're going to feed them through our food pantries, all other avenues. We're going to feed them nutritionally based, healthy food, and teach them how to cook it. One of the saddest days of this journey was watching a sister at a food pantry look at a beet and say, what is this? How do I cook this? We need to give people information so they can be empowered to eat a healthy lifestyle.
I feel like you started to answer this question in your last answer, but I want to ask it anyway in case you have some additional things to add. How do you, and this comes from Elaine, how do we persuade young people to eat more healthfully?
They are so ready. You know, these young people are ready. And what we need to do, we need to connect the Black Lives Matter movement, the hip hop industry to get the message out. You know, it is like the old singers during the 60s. You know, we have a message in our music, wake up everybody, you know, what's going on. The message was in the music. If we start letting our young Black warriors that are marching for Black Lives Matter, if we say, hey, if Black Lives Matter, you want to see the real butchery of Black and brown people? It's not only on the street corners with police officers. Go into your hospitals and see what's happening to your family members. If we take this energy and now put it into the energy of a movement of saying Black Lives Matter, that they're not butchered on the medical room surgeries, that 12 Black women die 12 times the rate as white women through maternal morbidities. That's Black Lives Matter, fighting to end that. Black mothers who are watching their babies come through cesareans when it's not an emergency and we're not inoculating them with the microbiomes that they use. That is the Black Lives Matter. And so I think that if we start getting these young, bright, intelligent, energetic warriors to connect the police abuse with the food abuse, you're going to see a difference. And then we need to incorporate it in our schools, a nutritional based education, teaching real home economics where young people learn how to cook good tasting, healthy foods, and they'll start turning this whole cycle around.
And I'm so glad that you're mentioning Black Lives Matter. I think so often, you know, they're vilified and people kind of, you know, knee jerk, just people don't really know what they're about. People aren't going to their website and reading their platform. And when you go and do the research, you find that, of course, there is an emphasis on kind of addressing police violence. You know, they talk about reimagining our relationship with energy and thinking about what changes can we make to address climate change. Yes. You know, they're talking about the exploitative nature of capitalism. They're talking about food systems. And so I think, you know, that kind of intersectional approach is vitally important. And we have to hold power accountable, and we have to be doing all the work to actually like change the reality of our communities.
Okay, thank you for listening to that. I would like for you to go to the next slide on the Nearpod, and there's a quote there by Eric Adams that I would like for you to read and just you know, a brief thoughtful response to that quote. I would really appreciate it if you would do that now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your responses. So now I'm going to share with you a little bit about this idea for a workshop. And I would like to elicit from you some ideas that you may have for the workshop itself and have a discussion about that. So let me share my screen again. Hold on. Okay, so should teachers be food role models? That's the name of this talk. Health is wealth. I just want to mention that when I speak to students, I've often said that the wealthiest person in the world suffering from a chronic disease would swap bodies with a healthy person who didn't have much money at all, and that health is truly our greatest source of wealth. So for my workshop itself, I'm thinking that there are 3 topics, and this is the workshop, hopefully, that's going to be created for teachers. I came up with the idea of dividing it into 3 different parts. Nutritional, what's the link between food and disease? How does nutrition impact disease development? The political, what are the current disease rates? Why are communities that live in poverty disproportionately impacted by nutrition-related diseases? How does food education and choice impact our students? Who's profiting from food ignorance? Who sits on nutritional boards? Who is formally educated about food in our society? Are doctors and teachers required to study nutrition? Yes, the person with your hand up. I can't see your name because of the way it's formatted, but go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to get people's thoughts on how this, of course, it's related, this issue is related to education and it's related to ignorance about food, but it's also related to what's accessible within certain neighborhoods. The first thing that I notice when I see neighborhoods gentrified in my home borough of Brooklyn is that markets show up with access to real produce and other places are taken down. And from people that I've talked to who grew up in these neighborhoods, the issue isn't that they don't necessarily know what to eat, it's what they have access to within the vicinity. So I think that the issue is also very greatly connected to what's accessible in certain neighborhoods, and there needs to be a push for access to produce in various neighborhoods. So I just wanted to point out that it's the combination of what is present within neighborhoods and education. I don't think that it's necessarily only early childhood education, even though it's imperative that we reform the nutrition programs within early childhood education. But I wanted to just ask what people's thoughts were on that topic in particular. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I think that it's also highly related with what foods are subsidized by our government. So what foods are affordable, and that's, you know, government policy. And definitely there are tremendous issues with food access. I am very familiar with Harlem Grown. It's an uptown urban farm. And one of the things that they did was a census, a survey within the neighborhood of the gardens, and they found wildly high numbers of pharmacies, liquor stores, and fast food places, and a dearth of, as you said, food stores that are offering fresh foods. And when the fresh foods are being offered, they're often out of the price range for many people. So these are structural issues, and I'm hoping that government policy will shift. I found out recently that so I was a kid in the 80s, and we had really good school food. It was scratch cooked. It was cooked in the kitchen of the cafeteria. And what Ronald Reagan did was he shifted the financing so that when that kind of food equipment would break, the cooking equipment, it was not replaced, but the government was offering free warming machines. So that's how this evolved, that schools are getting frozen food that they warm up and serve. They do not cook their own food. There's a big push for scratch cooking in New York City and in some other parts of the country, but the problems are so tremendous and systematic. Because I'm in education and I work with teachers and I prepare teachers for the classroom, that's sort of the place where I can come in and offer some level of reform. But you're absolutely right in the sense that this is a broader problem. It's not going to be solved with teachers taking a 1 hour, 2 hour workshop, right? So it's just like it's unfortunately not something that's going to be easily solved. I'm going to take us off screen share for a second because I see other hands up. I can't see your names when it's on screen share. So Talia, please.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on what Sienna was saying, because this was actually the thought I was having throughout all of this, is that I think what, you know, the talk we viewed is of value, but it was like really ignorant to the fact that food deserts are a huge problem. And it's, you know, like you combine that with gentrification, it's like you start adding grocery stores like Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and then the rent value gets skyrocketed. And then the people that live in these neighborhoods can no longer afford to live there. Why? Because there's food access. And like, the solution to the problem is much more than just education. Education's important, but really if you come in and educate these people and you don't give them actual access to the foods, then it's kind of just like setting them up for failure, because they become like aware and enlightened to a problem that they can't solve. And it, you know, like it's much more of a multifaceted approach. Maybe that looks like having rent control departments in more places when we start slowly adding grocery stores. Yeah, I think we can't like look at this problem without looking at the fact that we are very much creating the problem, especially as white people.
Agreed. And but one interesting thing that's happened in the last few years is that the number of people who eat plant-based in the United States has shifted. And currently overall in the United States, 3% identify as plant-based or vegan. And 8% of African Americans identify as plant-based or vegan. So this is really a movement that is primarily within the Black community in the United States. And so I think that you are all right in the sense that there are tremendous issues with displacement in neighborhoods, with a dearth of fresh food options, with a lack of affordability of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and legumes and whole grains, all of the important stuff that we should be eating daily. At the same time, the number of African-American chefs, recipe books that are created, and the Black Veg Fest that goes on in Brooklyn every year, it highlights the Coalition for Healthy School Food also is, raising awareness about healthy eating in the neighborhoods in the Bronx and Northern Manhattan and in Brooklyn. So I feel like there is good stuff going on. This problem is multifaceted, and like I said, I think that what you both said should be a part of the nutrition workshop that's offered to teachers. At the same time, as long as the government is serving these chronic disease sparking foods, we have this tremendous problem. So I see it as very sinister that the government is serving to incarcerated people, to government employees, and to school children highly unhealthy foods. And so it's going to be the problem is hard to solve, but I feel like as long as there's this level of ignorance about what is healthy and what is not, doctors don't know, teachers don't know, how can students then ever plug in and understand on a deeper level what they should be, what kind of choices they should make? Now, when I taught students, I used to say to them, you're not choosing the foods that are put in front of you. For the most part, you've got the school cafeteria and you have your own food from home. But when there are opportunities for choices, and as you get older, you'll have more and more opportunities for choices, these are the healthiest and the most optimal foods to choose. So yeah, the problem is big. Tatiana.
I completely agree with what Sienna and Talia were saying, but it just makes me think about that I work in a preschool right now in a very wealthy neighborhood, and these kids are coming in with like designer brands actually, but I notice what they eat for lunch because I too am plant-based. I actually took the same certificate as you at Cornell.
Nice.
But so I notice what they eat for lunch, and they do not eat healthy things. They have a lot of processed like sugar foods and a lot of like processed bars that have a lot of sugar in it and a lot of like yogurts with a lot of sugar. And it just makes me think how like even their parents are uneducated about food, and it's not a issue of access because they obviously can afford fresh produce, but yeah. And also like the teacher too, like she is uneducated about food, and she thinks like we tell the kids to eat their healthy food first, and that can include a bar that has like 20 grams of sugar in it, but like nobody really thinks about the fact that there's like that amount of sugar in it. So I think that this is very interesting, like it's kind of educating teachers, but I also think about how like educating parents is important too, because they're the ones who are packing the lunch. And I don't know how much a teacher would be able, at least in a preschool classroom, how much the teacher can influence the diet in that sense, even though I think it's really important to educate teachers about it. But just a thought, I guess.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was in a public school classroom not long ago, and I looked at the breakfast that the students were eating, and within it were 18 spoonfuls of sugar, which is 3 times. We're supposed to have 6 spoonfuls maximum per day, and this is the government breakfast, 18 spoonfuls of sugar. Building up the addiction, right? That makes it just that much harder when we get older. So the fact that the teachers don't know is because they haven't been formally taught. I mean, you and I took this very comprehensive course, which taught us sort of, I felt floor to ceiling, very, very educated, but that was a privilege, right? And I feel like that should be something that is, that we should have a formalized K-12 nutrition curriculum every year that's science-based. And in terms of wealthy people versus people who are not who are underpaid, I feel like we have this universal addiction that happens when we're young to sugar, fat, and salt. And unless there's some event that breaks us from that, we're just going to carry it through generation to generation. So thank you for bringing it up. Sienna.
I also think, though, it has to do with American culture and not necessarily immigrant culture. For instance, the people that I knew who were first generation students when I was a child, including myself. I grew up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood in Brooklyn, and most of the kids that I knew, their parents had old recipes from their home country, and they had a culture surrounding fresh food and fresh recipes. But because we were living in an immigrant neighborhood, and because the neighborhood didn't have so much access, like I said before, to fresh produce and to fresh food, there was this disparity between what people knew what was good and what the access was. And then as soon as a Whole Foods, like Talia said, as soon as the Whole Foods entered the neighborhood, the rents skyrocketed, and a lot of people that I grew up with had to relocate. So I do think that it's, you know, a problem that spans across socioeconomic classes, but also I think that it's a problem that has to do with American food versus non-American food. American culture and American food, it's just bad food. We have the highest obesity rate and the highest rate of diabetes and heart disease in the world. But I do think that there is a socioeconomic factor when you just look at the way food establishments and markets and access impacts relocation and gentrification. And so I do think that there are plenty of people, just because I grew up in New York City, that have knowledge of the correct food, but they think that their parents don't, because their parents just don't have the money to feed the amount of children they have. If you have a family of 5, family of 6, how are you going to feed them all when you're in a low income neighborhood? So I do think that it's up to the schools, and it's up to the school programs and the cafeterias and the meal programs within the public school system that need to rectify this issue. But it's extremely complex.
It is complex, and I think that more often than not, people don't have a lot of knowledge about food and nutrition, because who are they getting it from? You know, who knows, and who's then imparting that? So, of course, if we Google or we look through the internet, we can find some information, but you can also find exactly counter information. So you can find that bacon and butter are amazingly healthy. You can find everything you want. So that's why I feel strongly that, you know, there should be, I mean, if I was in charge, we'd have K to 12 nutrition curriculum every year, in addition to opportunities for students to grow their own food, learn how to cook their own food, and comprehensive parent education. I used to run parent education workshops about food, and Tatiana, it's something that maybe you would consider doing in your school for parents, because parents, you know, there are people react differently to information. Some people immediately reject it straight out. They just say, I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. I'm not changing a drop, but at least they have the information, right? And then there are people who say, hey, I'm going to make incremental change, or there are those who are just going to flip the switch and make an immediate change. But without the information, they don't have the option to make a change. And that's what frustrates me the most, is that there are some people who have the information, but my doctors are not among them, and the teachers I work with are not among them. And those are two groups where people assume that there's a level of knowledge and that there's some level of expertise to advise us about how to be better, right? And teachers have a level of expertise, but it's nothing related to nutrition. Doctors definitely should have it. So because they're resistant to it. There've been fights for them to have more nutrition education that doctors have resisted. And so I say, well, let's bring it to the teachers. Tatiana.
Sorry, my hand won't go away for some reason, so I didn't have a comment. But yeah, I also, I guess, just thinking about it, like, it is very frustrating that doctors don't have background in nutrition, since so many of the diseases that they treat are foodborne illnesses, and then they're kind of just putting that band-aid effect by giving medicating it, which doesn't really get to the root of the problem and won't necessarily heal the person. So I've always found that very frustrating about our health system. And it's kind of, I feel like in general, just like made me less like have less faith in doctors, I guess, a lot of times, because I feel like they don't understand, like if you don't understand nutrition, I feel like how can you be in a medical field treating people in a way? So that frustrates me about our country, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, as the ancient Greek thinker Hippocrates said, food is medicine and medicine is food. This is not new. I mean, this is basic, logic. At the same time, there's just this tremendous ignorance. I just want to share a quick story, and that is that my husband had a bleeding ulcer, and the doctor gave him a pile of pills, and I Googled them and realized that these not only are addictive pills, but they also can cause the thing that they're supposed to solve. So I started heavy duty internet searching and found that I think it was in the 1940s, NIH, the National Institute of Health, which is sort of the gold standard for scientific research, took patients and gave them fresh cabbage juice twice a day for 2 weeks. 100% of them, ulcer was gone. This experiment was repeated in the 70s in San Quentin prison. Again, within 2 weeks, 100% of them, ulcer gone. None of the doctors that we spoke to recognized that cabbage juice. They thought we were quacks and weirdos coming up with this idea of cabbage juice. My husband did it 2 weeks later, ulcer gone. But where's the money in cabbage, right? I mean, one of the drugs that he was given, the profit last year on this drug Nexium was a $1 billion profit in 1 year, right? So they're not going to go for cabbage juice. Talia.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that I've been thinking about like what Sienna was saying too, the point that we were both kind of agreeing on. I don't think that when we speak about how it affects low socioeconomic groups, we're saying that teaching teachers isn't important. It still is, but and like I don't want to speak for you, Sienna, but this is the vibe that like I'm getting at least. I think that it would be important, and not just important, like maybe required in these workshops to really teach on the importance of advocacy work on top of just educating, because it's like twofold, right? If you don't teach people how important advocacy is, how is this problem going to get fixed? And two, if you're educating teachers to educate children, and then these children come home and tell their parents they want to eat healthier, but their parents don't have access, like the problem doesn't go anywhere. And also if you're teaching, right, like it just feels like it's connected to a lot, because if you're teaching a lot of minority children, and I can only speak for like my culture, which is being Hispanic, for a little kid to come in and say like, I'm not going to eat any of this because my teacher told me it's not good. Like that's so disrespectful to a parent. And I don't know, I think that the education is so vital, but it really needs to like incorporate all those factors in order to be effective.
And you're absolutely right. And I think that would come through in the nutrition education. So there are a few things going on here. If we have, I'm not in a power seat to create and implement K-12 nutrition education. I'm hoping that we're going to have a leader that will do that. So within this narrow framework of a teacher, it's not that I want teachers to become nutrition teachers through a workshop. That's naive. What I would like for them to do is to not eat unhealthy foods in front of students, and also to not serve unhealthy food to students. And I would like for them also to be aware of the corruption in the food system, of the subsidies of the government, and how this is something to advocate to change. But these are, that's a gigantic thing that I would just love to go away immediately, because it's so crazy that we subsidize the least healthy foods. And then, so I feel like the aim of the workshop, and I apologize if I didn't say it in a way that was clear, is not to teach teachers within an hour to become nutrition teachers, but rather to raise awareness and to create a healthy classroom for their students. Within a nutrition education program, like the one where I taught in earlier, in that case, I would say to the students, you go home and it's not that you say to your parents, I don't want to eat any of these foods. Until you're 18, you're going to be eating the foods that are served to you. However, so every class they would go home with a recipe and with an explanation, and it actually was pretty remarkable. So one of the things I did was I had a mystery guest every class. So for example, I'd bring in a cloth bag, like an eggplant, for example, and the kids would guess what it was. And then we'd pass it around and they would sometimes hug it because the texture of an eggplant and certain vegetables feels like a skin or like a leaf. And then I would talk to them about how to cook it. And the students would say, I went with my uncle to the store and we saw eggplants and we never tried them before. And we cooked them like you said, and it was really amazing. So I do feel like it takes time and energy, and definitely the message needs to be affirming of all families. At the same time, schools shouldn't be serving bad food, classrooms shouldn't be serving bad food, and teachers should not be eating bad food in front of students. That's sort of, you know, in the arena where I feel like there's some change that can be affected. The bigger questions I think we should advocate for. And the Coalition for Healthy School Food does exactly that. And I'm sure there are many other organizations who do similar work. Any other thoughts, comments? You three are amazing. Anything else? Okay, so I'm just going to go back. I just want to share with you a little bit more. So, you know, a lot of people when talking about food, they feel like their own personal eating habits are being asked to change. And so, as I said before, the goal would be to encourage educators to think of ourselves as food role models for the best benefit of our students, to learn about the racial bigotry in the health and food system, to become informed and curious to learn more and eager to share life-saving information about nutrition and food and justice. As I said earlier, to never eat unhealthy food in front of students and to only serve healthy food in front of students. One of my teachers said to me, the pizza party, you know, and I said, you can order a pizza with different kinds of vegetables on it with no cheese. Like it's delicious, and it can be an option at your parties if you find out what vegetables the students like. And hold on. Oh, so the workshop structure. So I wanted to talk about the politics, the education, and nutrition. So I think that all three are very important elements to talk about, not only how to promote better food choices, but also about racial injustice in our food system. Any thoughts or comments about this structure for a potential teacher workshop? Yes?
I guess this just makes me think, and it also kind of relates to what Talia said, how like I too have my mother's Hispanic, so I think about like her food culture and how you don't have to come home and say like, oh, I don't want to eat this, but there can be shifts. There's a lot of food already that can be like a plant-based friendly meal. Like I think of plantains and yuca and rice and beans, and it could be a shift in kind of, and this, what you just said kind of makes me think about that too, how you don't have to like reject foods, but you can kind of shift it around and change it a little bit, and how it could just be like a change. That kind of change can make a big difference, and learning about health that way, and then kind of looking at your food and the type of cultural food you have and changing, or the food that's in your culture, and you can kind of just change it in that way. And my cousin, she lives in the Dominican Republic, and she started a vegan food catering company there. And so she takes a lot of the foods that she like that are common there, and she kind of puts a vegan twist on it. So you're not like necessarily losing that aspect of it, but it's kind of just like healthified, I guess, in a way.
Wow, very nice. Thank you. I wish I could go. So, and then I wanted to share some resources with you. The first one is the course that Tatiana and I both took, Dr. Colin Campbell's Cornell University Plant-Based Nutrition Certificate. It was extremely thorough and helped me to understand that there are three motivations behind being plant-based. The first one is for our own health. The second one is for animals to not be killed or mistreated. So animal welfare. And the third reason is climate change. Factory farms are huge contributors to climate change. And so that is a huge motivation to eat, give up the foods that spark so much pollution. The next one is Nutrition Facts, which is a website by Dr. Michael Greger. He reads all of the studies and makes videos to sort of help lay people understand the science behind a lot of the nutrition facts. The next one is Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. They were the organization that wanted to put a warning label on cheese or on dairy products because they so directly cause cancer. They have really interesting free workshops, Zoom workshops for people on food and nutrition. The next thing is Healthy at Last. It's a great book that Eric Adams wrote. It has recipes in it, very worth checking out. How Not to Die is Dr. Greger's book. It's a book with great recipes and an introduction that is goes through all the different kinds of diseases that are caused by eating unhealthy foods. And I use that in teaching my own teachers about the impact, the health impact of eating unhealthy foods. The next one is Sweet Potato Soul. I got a chance to meet Janae Claiborne. She's amazing. It's a soul food, plant-based web channel, and she also has a great cookbook. I mentioned earlier Harlem Grown. They grow thousands of pounds of produce every year, and they give it away for free to families in Harlem, and children come and work on the farms, and they are open to having volunteers all the time to come in and farm with the children. Okay. Those are any feedback from that with the workshop structure or further ideas. I totally understand your frustration, or I think I understand your frustration that this what I'm proposing doesn't solve the entire problem, but I feel like it makes tremendous inroads because, as we know, in early childhood, that's when the food addictions are cemented, and when we see teachers eating Cheetos and drinking Cokes in front of children, it's not verbalized, but it's a way of telling children these are okay foods and drinks to imbibe. And so I just think that we need to clue teachers in that they are being watched and that they should model best practices. Just like I said earlier, we don't curse in front of our students. We shouldn't be eating deadly foods in front of our students. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Tatiana and then Sienna?
I guess just in general, I like partaking in this discussion because even as someone who's taken like plant-based program or like educational programs before, I guess like it's easy to kind of forget about this since it's not really talked about a lot, and like health and food aren't talked about so often. And so like even I find myself like reverting back to like unhealthy habits sometimes with food, like, and just eating unhealthy things. And I think it would be nice if this is discussed more or put into like school curriculums, or just discussed more often so that people are kind of have that reminder to like eat healthy. And I feel like that also helps with habits to kind of have that like constant reminder, or just like, yeah, for it to be at the forefront of people's minds more because it's discussed more.
Thank you. And there are two things I want to mention about food that I didn't mention earlier. One is that the foods we eat are very much tied to our mood. And so that's something to, and this one's more obvious, very much tied to our immune system. And in the age of a pandemic, it's extremely important, more important than ever probably, to eat well so that our immune system remains strong. Thank you for those comments. Sienna.
Thank you for this presentation. I completely agree that it's the responsibility of schools to model good eating for children, and it's the responsibility of schools to provide healthy meals within school because kids receive half their meals at school. I would suggest, though, that in doing a presentation like this in the future, or in having discussions like this in the future, to also mention the class issue, and to mention that it's not just an education issue, and that these kids can go home to families who do have the knowledge of these healthy eating habits, who are not just ignorant about the food choices, but don't have the means to buy the correct food to support their families. I've seen this extensively, just where I grew up, it's not only a matter for many people of knowledge, but a matter of means. And so that's even why it's more important for the schools to take on this, and public schools to take on this responsibility for giving students what they need, because the federal government and the state allow for that food access. So it makes it even more imperative what you're saying, the responsibility of the school system to provide these healthy meals. But I think that we have to be careful in not mentioning the class issue when we talk about educating parents and educating students, because when they go home, the access is just not there. And it doesn't always have to do with education, because many of these people in low-income neighborhoods come from cultures where there is a food culture and there is an emphasis on fresh ingredients. But as we can see with gentrification and the changes to these neighborhoods and people getting pushed out, it is a matter of access, I think, in many places. So it's important to add it to the discussion. But I think that it makes these education programs even more imperative. But I think that the expectation should be that the school food changes more so than the home food. And the home food does need to change, but that is a more systemic issue. So that's my thoughts. But thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. One interesting thing that was happening in the Harlem Elementary School, PS 197, where I taught, is that the students were experiencing this education, and they were pushing the school to be more healthy, and they were advocating in their local stores for more healthy foods. And they were, so there, the principal was so proud that the kids were like, we don't have a salad today for lunch. So over time, because in this particular program I did, there was a lot of snack making. And so kids were very open and, to trying new foods. And when they would try them, they wanted them more often. So I was amazed. I was expecting the kids to not want to try foods. That never happened. Every kid was open. Every kid, I'm really not kidding, was open to trying every food. So there was this open-hearted love for new flavors, new tastes. And there was this whole thing of don't yuck my yum, because we wanted, kids to try things and even if they didn't like them, to not, spread it around too much. But we really achieved in that school, and the program is ongoing, that it was changing the culture slowly of students and parents and what the school cafeteria was offering. So I think that it can have a wider impact. I wanted to just share with you for a minute, because of the talk about, there's a 1-minute clip from the Eric Adams video in which it comes up with this idea of, is being vegan a white thing? And so I just want to quickly share that, because I think it's relevant. So just give me 1 minute.
Because you and I both know, and I'm pretty sure you hear in the circles, people attempt to say, well, plant-based veganism, that's a white thing. What are you trying to be white? No, it's not a white thing. It's a right thing to eat and ensure your body is right, and fight to ensure that our young people and families are not given really food apartheid type systems. And so, yes, you heard it. I used to hear it in the beginning. With folks, is when we go out to dinner with friends, or I'm at friends, the homes of my friends, and they say, well, you think you're special, or, you don't want to eat, but everyone else is eating. Yeah. But that attitude changed once we started engaging in a comfortable conversation. And you're right, it's about meeting people where they are and taking them where they want to be, and not trying to speak to people where you are.
Yep. And, and
so I think that's great advice just in life. Not everybody is ready or wants to hear the message, but I feel like educators, as people who are doing the best we can for our students to have the best lives that they can, we should be open to the conversation, the education, and spreading the word about chronic diseases connection with the foods that we take in. So I'm going to continue working on this. I'm hoping to create a workshop. I don't know if any of you are interested in being clued in on the progress that I make, but I'm hoping this spring to create something, a 2-hour workshop, integrating the ideas that you presented today about making sure that it's centered on justice and an awareness of the food apartheid system that we have in the United States. At the same time, encouraging teachers to see themselves as food role models and to be aware of the foods that, you know, it's the age of cupcakes and pizza parties should be long gone, with the awareness that we have about how damaging the addictions are and the foods are for the young people's bodies. And so I'm going to continue with this, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing your ideas. It really will make the final presentation a better one. So I hope that you all feel a little bit more enriched and go on and have a great day at the Winter Roundtable Conference. So thank you for coming. Bye, everybody.
I would love to be updated if you.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that because I wrote down your name as a person to try to find. Are you with TC? Are you with another college?
No, I'm in the counseling psychology department at TC.
Oh, marvelous. Okay, very cool. So I wrote down your name, and so I should easily be able to find your email, and I will reach out to you. I just met Greg. What's his last name? He's the one of the professors.
Yeah, I have him as an asynchronous class, so it's like something with a P. It's like
yeah, I put it at the top of my page. Hold on, Gregory Payton. Yeah.
So yeah, I have him from one of my classes, but I've never met him.
Funny. Yeah. I never met him either, but he actually did work for my program about 10 years ago. So TC is so gigantic, and also I feel like psychology and education, it's like two private opinions that don't intersect much.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's really important for counselors too to be aware of kind of nutrition, because a lot of times that they can be very helpful to clients who are kind of looking for a healthier lifestyle and to kind of in a lot of ways. So that was one of the reasons I pursued that nutrition certificate, because I'm like hopeful that it could be useful as a future counselor. So yeah, I would be interested to be updated on your curriculum. So
yeah, I'm very excited. So, you know, Colin Campbell, he's the one who did that. I'm going to turn off my recording. Hold on.
Sorry, I have the